Observer is a cyberpunk horror game with an incredibly well-realized world and an engaging premise. It was a complete mind trip, and it was one hell of an experience, even if there are some problems with its story and delivery. Observer takes place in a chilling cyberpunk vision of 2084 Poland, where humans all have modified cybernetic bodies. You play as Daniel Lazarski, a detective who heads to a rundown apartment building in search of his son. You are an observer, a cybernetic human with a Dream Eater apparatus that allows you to hack into the minds of other people in order to observe their memories. The opening of Observer has you walking through the building, interrogating tenants and searching for clues. Now, some people feel that this was the weaker part of the game, but I absolutely love this, and it was one of my favorite parts. The premise and world were extremely engaging, and I was so curious to figure out where it was leading. I felt like I was an actual detective searching around, and it really made me want to be thorough so I could figure things out for myself. It also helped that I loved the main character's voice actor. I thought Rutger Hauer did a great job, and he was a perfect fit for the character. His delivery was very laid back and a bit apathetic, but I thought it fit perfectly with the theme and the narrative. I can see where some people may not like it as much, but personally, I loved it.
The year is 2084. If they told me what the world would become, I would not have believed them.
As the game progresses, things start to warp and reality starts to get blurred, especially during the mind hack sequences. These sections were very wild and abstract with a lot of flashing lights and environment warping, and they were really fun to experience, even if they don't always make complete sense from a story perspective. I did thoroughly enjoy them, but I felt there were some moments where it felt like it was abstract just for the sake of being abstract. However, I was still completely entertained, and I think that's worth something. The story develops into something that I didn't expect, and I absolutely loved going further into the rabbit hole to try to figure things out. The game just kept getting crazier and crazier, and I had an absolute blast playing through it all. The only problem is that the story is a bit convoluted. The ending does a good job at wrapping things up, but I was still left with a few questions unanswered. However, when I rewatched the last few hours, I picked up on a few things that I missed the first time, and once I fully understood the narrative, I thought it was great. If you end up playing this game, make sure to pay attention because some of the answers are right in front of your face. I still think it was a bit too convoluted, but in the end, I thought the narrative was great, and it was certainly engaging as hell. At first glance, this game may seem like a quote-unquote walking simulator, and I've seen some people mislabel it as that. While there certainly isn't as much gameplay as other games, it would be wrong to assume that there isn't any. The main chunk of the game is spent picking up objects, investigating rooms, and talking to the other tenants. You have some choice in what Dan says, but there isn't any effect on how the story plays out. This is fine though, because the story wouldn't really work that way, and Dan is already an established character on his own. However, talking to people may grant you more information and clues, which can help you progress through the story faster or discover some side objectives. I also love talking to people because I was so interested in the world and I loved hearing everyone's little stories.
Does this kind of stuff happen often? You ever see a husband get violent?
Nah, he ain't a wife beater or anything like that. He's just messed up.
Besides talking and picking things up, you also have access to different scanners that help you investigate crime scenes and identify the objects you find. These were simple to use, but still very cool. There are also some small puzzles throughout the game, especially during the mind hack sections. They weren't very hard, but I thought they were still pretty fun. Lastly, there were a few hide-and-seek style chase sections. These were admittedly a bit off-putting at first, and I'm not a huge fan of random stealth sections in non-stealth games. But they were pretty tense, and I ended up enjoying them in the end. They do break up the pacing, and I can totally see where some people may not like them as much, but I didn't really mind them, even if they were a bit off-putting. It's also worth noting that on my PS4 I experienced some frame rate issues for like the first 3 hours, but for some reason they just seemed to go away, and I didn't really notice anything throughout the rest of the game. Let me start by saying that I absolutely loved the world of Observer, and I think it is incredibly well realized and full of detail. Within minutes of playing, I was completely hooked. And it's only an 8-hour game, yet the world building is strong enough to make it an unforgettable place. The game's dark and disturbing themes of control and oppression were perfectly displayed in the locations, characters, and technology you witness along your journey. Visually, I think this game looks fantastic, and the cyberpunk style is equal parts beautiful and creepy. The use of vibrant colors and the warping of the environments in the mine hack sections were especially cool. The music and sound design also did a great job of creating a very creepy atmosphere. While the developers chose to go a more atmospheric and ambient route with the music, there are still some good tracks in here. There's a track in particular that has these beautiful yet creepy echoey voices, and it fits perfectly with the ending of the game. I am a big sci-fi fan, and I absolutely love cyberpunk style as well as horror, so this is probably my personal favorite game world so far this year. Observer is a bit of a weird game to fully recommend to everyone because there are several things that you will either like or not like, depending on who you are. Personally, I loved my time with Observer, and it was an extremely memorable experience. While I think some parts are a bit too out there, I thought the rest was great, and I would certainly recommend checking it out if you are a fan of horror or cyberpunk games. I enjoyed every second of this game, and it's honestly the most fun I've had playing a game so far this year.